It's another week inside the Limitless Leadership Lounge. I'm Jon Goehring, joined as always by Dr. Rehnuma Karim from Bangladesh and Coach Jim Johnson. We are excited to have a very special guest on today. But before we dive into Erik, we're going to also remind you that if you've been enjoying what you've been hearing here on the show, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review up on wherever you're listening or viewing up on YouTube. Again, that helps us reach a wider audience, and it also gives us some feedback on what kinds of leaders to bring on to help you, the young and emerging leader. So, Coach, go ahead and introduce our guest today. Let's get started.
Yeah, very excited because I'm a SUNY Cortland Red Dragon graduate, although I got to admit I was there a few years before Dr. Bitterbaum became president, but we've connected and built a nice relationship, and we're really excited to welcome Dr. Erik Bitterbaum. And let me just share a little bit about him. He's got so many great things, so I'm just going to highlight a few. So SUNY Cortland President Dr. Erik Bitterbaum is the second longest serving president in the State University New York system, arriving at Cortland in 2003. As president, he's guided more than 400 million in new construction, and visiting the campus, I can tell you the campus is beautiful. President Bitterbaum's commitment to diversity is reflected by the growth of students from the underrepresented groups from the roughly 4% of the student population when he arrived to roughly 25% in 2024. Throughout his tenure, the University Powerhouse Division III athletic program is consistently ranked amongst the best in the nation, including a national championship in football not too long ago. And he also, they had the New York Jets as part of their training camp, which I got to visit once in between 2009 and 2014. President Bitterbaum has presided over the two largest capital campaigns in SUNY Cortland history, raising more than 57 million collectively. A biologist who specializes in ornithology, although we probably won't get into that topic today. Dr. Bitterbaum is a fixture at campus events and recognized by students, employees, and alumni for his tireless support of SUNY Cortland. Without further ado, Dr. Erik Bitterbaum, welcome to the Limitless Leadership Lounge.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. And I'm going to start. We want to help young and emerging leaders, but I'm just really impressed the fact that you've been able to be a president at a college for over 2 decades. Tell us what are the keys to having that kind of longevity? Because I know when people get into leadership roles, not too many are staying over 2 decades in the same position.
Yeah, so first of all, I have always believed that institutions are built by people who come and stay. And so I knew in my mind I would make a commitment at least a decade because there were things that I wanted to accomplish here. And I think the only real explanation is I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed the people. I saw that I could make a difference in the life of this institution. My wife and I spent a lot of time with our students, faculty, and staff, and there were just a lot of rewards. Now, I would go home some days and wondered, what did I accomplish? And there were other days I went home and thought it's the greatest job in the world. Um, so you take the good with the bad. It takes persistence, and um, and it just crept up on me, to be quite frank. If you were to tell me that I would be president here for 22 years, I would have been deeply surprised. But truthfully, I've been very fortunate. The key, I think, also is who you surround yourself with. Who do you bring to your hospital, your business, your institution? So I'm very much involved in who we hire. No one comes to my campus as a faculty member or as a director that I don't have the opportunity to interview. And so I know who's coming here. And I've always felt you build a great institution by bringing great people. Now, in the end, at the departmental level, they get to choose the person, but the president, the provost, meaning the academic chief officer, and others all have input. And I'll go the extra mile if it takes extra dollars to bring in an extraordinary individual. But also, I can veto if I really think there's something that is amiss. So I do think we have a spectacular faculty and staff here. And that's also made it very enjoyable because we all work together.
I got to delve in because that was one of my other questions I had down. Is because you are highly involved, which I think is great in the hiring of the of your staff. Tell us what do you look for? What are some of the characteristics that you think you're bringing these people on that are going to be right for SUNY Cortland?
Yeah, so in my mind, I started to jot down a number of years ago the qualities that I w was seeking. There's some overlap here, but I will share with you what I was looking for with faculty and then what I was looking for staff. For faculty, I call it the three C's and E. First of all, I wanted people that were competent. I make that any faculty member who comes here has to give a 50-minute presentation for a sophomore level class.
Hmm.
And if they can't shine at that moment, then I don't want them, quite frankly. So they spend the day with us, and I really want to see their understanding of their discipline. And then that 50-minute presentation is clarity that, working with students and other colleagues. The third C is caring. I like people who are caring. And the fourth, the E, is enthusiasm. If I have those four qualities, I believe I've got a great beginning with a faculty member. And then with the staff, now, as I said, there's overlap. I always enjoy people who are intelligent and who bring something to their staff position, whatever it would be. I want people of integrity. I think that's most important. Um, they have to maintain absolute integrity at our institution. I want initiators. It's always much more easy to ask a racehorse to pull back than to try to get a mule going. I like initiators, and then I like people of intensity. And if we have those qualities, I think the college would be successful. And we have. And I'll just give you one quick example. We had room last fall for 1,300 freshmen, and we had over 17,567 applications.
Wow.
We had to reject thousands and thousands of students. That wasn't the case 22 years ago. And so we have really built something here. Not just me, it's the people we brought. But that's a sign of a very fine institution. As our students say, Dr. Bitterbaum, are you aware we're a hot college? To chuckle. But it's very painful when you have to say to students or alumni, your child did not get in. We do have a solution. Go to one of our 30 community colleges, do well, and then, of course, you can transfer here.
Mm. It's one important thing, Eric, you have brought out is the staying power. Because nowadays I see some in millennials and also in Gen Zs, there is the tendency of switching jobs for something better, for something better. But you stayed back because you found something that matched your value. So I was wondering when you are selecting individuals, apart from the C's, the three C's, how important is to find the values that you also are so much strongly attached to? Um, the interviewees, they also shared the similar values with you, or are you flexible with it?
No, no, you're always flexible. And, you only have a day with people. I have about 40 minutes. And there are questions that are, important to me. So, for example, as Jim would know, we're first and foremost a teaching institution. We're not like Harvard where it's publish or perish. And so one of the questions I ask is, in my mind, since we are a teaching institution, could you please share with me what it means to be a great teacher? And then how would you become that great teacher? So I can learn
Right.
very quickly. There are other questions that I ask. So I get a good sense of who the candidate is. And then throughout the day, of course, they're meeting with other people. I do submit my thoughts on the candidate. People can fool you. We have brought
Mm.
people here, for a day, and they say all the right things. We think these are people that will do a great job, and Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out, but that's actually pretty rare here. And
Right.
because we do a fairly good job of getting to know our candidates. But
Mm,
we don't want, everyone to look the same or feel the same about issues. We want diversity in all its ramifications. And so I worry about that people always choose people that are like them in their thoughts, and et
mm.
cetera. And so it's important to us to have a very diverse community in thinking and values, but I know what we stand for, and I think most of our community does. So I think we have been successful in choosing, great people to come here.
And like a follow-up question to that, but now we are observing a need for real leadership, like everywhere across the world. We are trying to find the real leaders, and in America, I'm observing there is this crisis, like this divisiveness on DEI, on diversity. And I think the presidents of the universities are experiencing a challenging times nowadays, how to balance the issues of diversity and the new rules and laws, ever changing things. So if you are when you are a leader, how do you manage this kind of contentious time? Like, what is your mindset? What are your approaches to these kind of challenging situations?
It is very challenging. In the first few weeks, the Trump administration put out 50 executive orders, many of them having to deal with higher education. I am very fortunate that I'm in New York State
Mm,
because our governor and our chancellor very much support diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I should also point out in inclusion, it's not just it's people that have disabilities. Cortland is very well known.
right.
We have people who sign here for people who are hearing impaired. We have a very large staff that works with visually impaired individuals. Though
Mm,
Jim can share with you, we're a very hilly campus. We have a
mm,
number of people that have chosen to come here because we are willing to work with them and help them be successful who are in wheelchairs. So we are a very diverse community of students and even faculty. Um, we have several faculty that are actually blind, and we work with them so that they can be successful. So DEI is very controversial. As you can see, Harvard is put on a complete freeze, as have many Ivy Leagues, because they saw what happened to Columbia.
mm,
And we're doing our best. I will share with you that our new chancellor, who was Secretary of Education in the Barack Obama administration, John King, one of his four planks is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're not going to draw back from that. Now,
right.
we'll see
Mm,
if these orders go all the way to the Supreme Court. But right now, there have been several injunctions by federal judges that have put things on hold, and we're not changing anything. I have an Office of
mm,
Multicultural Life. I have an Office of Inclusion and Diversity, and they're doing great work. But it is a challenging time. And the presidents get together really every 2 weeks to work through these issues. We used to get together 4 times a year, but because it's such a stressful time that,
mm,
with us being together and trying to figure out the complexity of what's happening in the world. We use each other's knowledge. And SUNY is very fortunate. We have law schools, medical schools, graduate schools. So there's a lot of wisdom within the system
right.
itself. And so we are, of course, helping each other. If I was just an individual campus somewhere, I would probably struggle a lot more.
Mm,
Yeah, Eric,
exactly.
Eric, I think one thing that you mentioned earlier too, as far as what you look for in staff, is so important to highlight, and that is initiative. You had a good phrase, something about a horse and a mule. I'm gonna butcher it if I try, but right.
All right.
it's going to be much easier to get somebody to back off a little bit than to like get somebody to get going. And that's something I've noticed as an adjunct professor too, especially, with youth sometimes it's very, very hard to provide that initiative. Are there some clues that you look for when you're hiring that somebody has that initiative that would make them a good fit?
Yeah, of course, we first begin with their resume and see what they've accomplished, their cover letter also. And then, for many of our new hires, they're fresh out of graduate school. And so there isn't a great deal, to look at. But there are letters from their major professors that we have. So in some cases, it is a guess. It's a leap of faith that this is somebody that we want. Um, but there are usually clues. I'll give you one interesting example. We hired somebody in a discipline, and he put on his resume that he was a magician. And so when he was here, I asked him about that. And he's the kind of person who goes to hospitals to work with sick
Wow.
children, gave other examples. That was somebody I wanted. This was someone who went out into the world with this really kind of funny, being a magician with cards and, thimbles. He had a coin in his pocket. He took it out and, brought it out of my ear. It was just, and I thought, first of all, he's very engaging. He's coming from a very fine graduate school. He has a number of publications, but his community service was really very unique. And so we gambled, and sure enough, now 5 years later, he will achieve his tenure, and he has done everything that we could ask of somebody. We've also brought people here thinking, oh, this is going to be a great hire. And unfortunately, sometimes they're duds. And I won't go into why, but yeah.
That's good. Good point. So, Eric, we, often hear, and I'm curious, being a longtime president of a college, is there, or university, I don't want to mix my words here, is that the fact that people talk so much about it when you get in leadership positions of the famous work-life balance or work-life integration. There are a lot of terms for that. I'm
Hmm.
curious, can you take us through a little bit of how you've been able to balance or integrate both your work and family life?
Well, if you ask my wife, she'd say I do a miserable job at this.
I'm right with you on that. My wife could say the same
I can only
thing.
imagine coaches I know during their season are
Yeah,
very focused and put in long hours.
yeah.
I would tell you to be a president of a university is not for the faint of heart.
Mhm.
It is long hours and it is a total commitment. I've enjoyed it, but in order for us to make it work, we have two children. They're adults now. And so they grew up thinking that they had hundreds of uncles and aunts, everything. From the time they were born, we would take them to basketball games. We took them to lectures. We ate in the cafeteria with students. And so first of all, they grew up very comfortable around adults, which was marvelous. But our life really revolved around the university, and it was for our children. So I think it worked out for all of us. My wife is a bit of an introvert, whereas I'm obviously an extrovert. So I really, enjoy being on a college campus. We live on a college campus right now, and for the last 22 years, we'll have students knock on our door on a Saturday night at 2 in the morning.
Oh,
What,
wow.
Whoa.
what are we doing? Are we enjoying the evening? And not at 2 in the morning, gentlemen. But, of course, they're a little snockered, but they usually under apology. But we have learned to really embrace this life. And, during the pandemic, I was working 70 to 80 hours a week trying to get us through during the Great Recession. But I find it invigorating. I find that I've set goals and I've been able to achieve a lot of them. And to see a 17 or 18-year-old come to the college and then at graduation, that's my favorite day is commencement.
Mm,
And to see the changes that part of it is just maturing, but part of it is all the wonderful things that can happen on a college campus. And that just, is a marvelous thing to see.
Mhm.
Eric, I got to dive in one more, because I always kid Rehnuma and John about, the first person you got to lead is lead yourself. What are some of the like daily habits that you do that may be able to help for young leaders, in helping you have the energy to sustain what you're trying to do day in and day out?
Yeah, I do exercise. I think that's very important. I'm 72 now, so when I was a little younger, I would play soccer with faculty and staff and students. We actually had a league. So I played 50 and over, 60 and over. I'm not playing 70 and over. Point. I walk most days in the Student Life Center. It's a beautiful facility we have. 5 times around is a mile. I usually look at the clock and walk for a solid hour,
Mm.
and that's very healthy. There's an article recently that shows that if you walk 180 minutes a week, you could add 11 years to your life. I found it a rather intriguing
Mhm.
uh, article. I should share with you when I walk, a lot of students know when I walk after dinner, they'll come up and say, "Can we walk with you, Dr. Bitterbaum?" And I'll say, "Honored." And then we don't get very far, and they say, "I have an issue that I know you can solve." So, but I think, eating well, watching what you eat. We go to a lot of banquets, of course. Also, exercising. I enjoy reading, and I do watch sports on TV. So I try to find things that I really enjoy. And yeah, I've had a very fortunate, healthy life to date.
Mm.
Excellent.
And I've also saw that you are an ornithologist. So nature, you love the nature. So
Yeah, I go
that's
birding a
another,
lot, and
right.
that's. But it's not always that you move around. You find a place and then you observe with binoculars. I usually take
Mm-hmm.
notes, what's going on. But yes, from a very tender age, I had a grandfather that introduced me to the great outdoors. And so,
Mm.
my children have gone camping with us. We bird. Um, yes, and I get to teach on occasion. And so,
Nice.
taking students into the field, I'm really a field biologist and I'm a tropical ornithologist. So I've
Mm.
Oh,
taken
nice.
students to Belize twice. I did
Wow.
my research in the Caribbean. So I choose really nice places to hang out, I should.
Good for you.
Yeah, and it shows like in the well-being, we always talk about mindfulness. And when you are in that position and you have to observe with intent, that mindfulness skill is needed. So that's another power of observation. So my question to you, like, how do you think this power of observation also helped you as a leader? And why do you think this is an important skill?
Yes, well, I think being a scientist has been very helpful. And I'll give you some examples. I jotted this down because you sort of had a question that was along these lines. I always believe you have to consult. And so by consulting, you're doing fact finding. That's what I do as a scientist. So fact finding, data gathering, trying to understand the information is very important. And then you have to reflect on what you observe. So
Right.
working, in my case, clarifying the issue, working with departments, trying to understand what I have observed. So being a field biologist has been, very helpful. And then you have to deliberate, understand the material, and then you have to make a decision. And so being a field biologist is I just, going through what I do in the field, and it has been very helpful. And so it carried over. I don't think I was very aware of it early in my career, uh, but the way I approached issues was really the scientific method,
Mm.
and gathering information, thinking about it is a very formal process. And I think a lot of presidents don't know what to do. they're glad to be presidents. The life expectancy now is around 5 years, which isn't very long. Partly is because it's a hard job, but secondly, how do you go about making decisions? And so I think it just came natural to me, having been a field biologist and going through the process, how I do my science is just how I helps me run a
Right.
university.
Mm. You mentioned athletics, enjoying sports on TV, and I guess that makes sense because you got a great athletic program down there. And I know as a Brockport alum and adjunct professor that you've had our number, unfortunately, in several different sports. And I know on the football field when you won that national championship, that was a really cool thing. But so talk about as well sports and how that influences student life on campus and how you feel that is a good thing for students who are going to school but also performing as scholar athletes.
Yeah, I would first share with you that I was a student athlete in high
Mhm.
school and then in college. My fall sport was soccer, which I still watch the Premier League on the weekend. And then I was a golfer, so I made the soccer team and the golf team. I went to high school in Hawaii, so that was very, very helpful. And worked on a golf course, so it was free to play golf.
You do hang out in nice places.
Oh, yes. And I went to graduate school at the University of Florida.
Oh,
So
wow.
I know something about good weather. But anyway, uh, what I would share with you is that sports teaches a lot of lessons, and Coach Jim Johnson has written widely on it. But for me, it was learning about perseverance, accepting victory with defeat. And there are lots of life lessons. But the camaraderie that I learned with fellow athletes and with friends in both winning and losing has been very helpful. So I love athletics because there's just so many life lessons. And we're very interesting here at Cortland. We'll have 750 NCAA student athletes, but we also run a sports program. They're called sports clubs. They wear uniforms. They play against other schools. There's another 500 students that do that, men and women.
Uh-huh.
And then we have 2,000 students in intramurals.
Mm.
And you can ask them, they enjoy the competition, they enjoy the outdoors or the indoors. But I think it's the camaraderie, it's the friendships, it's enjoying each other's company, and physically doing something that makes it exciting for us. So we're big in athletics. I would say probably half the college. And then I learned not too long ago, when you look at our freshman class, 81% of the freshmen who came here were high school athletes.
Mm.
Wow.
They served on
Something.
a team. Now we don't have enough space for them, and a lot of them are willing to give it up after high school. So we are a very active, and they know the value of what it means to be a scholar athlete. It means a tremendous commitment. Now sometimes we have to help them because so we have mandatory study halls for some sports. We have mandatory this and that because we want them to be successful. But it adds a really lovely dimension to being here at SUNY Cortland. If you like sports, this is a great place to be.
Yeah, I could second that. The facilities and the campus is just beautiful. So, uh, well, you brought up camaraderie, and I'm going to dig a little bit. I do a lot of leadership presentations around the country. One of the things I always challenge leaders is trust important in building relationships? And I usually get 100% hands up. So my question, Erik, to you is, I know relationships is important to you. How do you build trust with the people that you're working with?
That's an excellent question. When I first came here, I didn't know anybody. And so that summer I arrived the first week of July. By the end of July, early August, I had a retreat. And I brought the whole leadership. We have a place at Racket Lake, but I brought them all together. And it was really to ask some questions. Who are we? Who do we want to become? what are our goals? How do we develop that team sort of uh, beginning that, I didn't know anyone. And so it was important. And and they could see right at the beginning that their ideas were important to me, that I praised them, I recognized their ideas counted. And so I look back and I think that's when I realized having that retreat and what I was trying to do started to build that trust. And it has continued. We do obviously have a lot of meetings on college campuses. One of the techniques that I use is before we leave a meeting, I go around the whole room and ask people for their additional thoughts. And it's interesting how many times people speak up. So if there are 6 or 7 of us, whatever the issue might be, I still go around and I want to gather more information. If we have to, we'll get back together. One other thing that I do is if I have a one-on-one meeting, I used to write it, but now because of the computer, I'll say, thank you for coming to my office to discuss that issue. This is my understanding of what we talked about. If there's any confusion, please. So we actually have something documented that helps us, and they realize that it's important to me that we understand each other, what we're trying to accomplish. I have a lot of meetings. I have a cabinet. On Monday, I meet with the whole cabinet, and then on Tuesday, it's with the provost. Wednesday, the vice president, for all the vice presidents throughout the week. And it's by having that opportunity to get together to talk through issues, hear their concerns. I'm really a sounding board. And I want my folks, like, when we had a new dean, he was doing something. I said, no, you're the dean. I want you to dean. And, I don't mind you making mistakes. And don't make $1 million mistakes, but, we learn from failure. And so I think through time, people have learned that at least this office is really interested in having their voice heard to do things and not worry that someone's going to, be angry. So that through time, we've built that trust. I
Yeah,
think,
I gotta delve in a little bit deeper because you brought up something that I think I learned a lot in my leadership is the one-on-one meetings. What advice would you give leaders in helping them run a very effective one-on-one meeting?
well, I always begin by saying, this is your opportunity to speak to me. So I think you don't speak first.
Mhm.
So now it depends. For the cabinet, we have an agenda, but I'm not first on the agenda.
Mhm.
Uh, so I think that's really critical on a one-to-one, that it's your meeting and I'm here for you to help you. Um, and then, it's the sharing of ideas. Sometimes I don't have the answer and I'll say, let me mull that over and we'll get back together. But we're brainstorming is what we're really doing. What are the alternatives? If we do this, what does that mean? If we do that, what does it mean? And they value that those one-on-ones. I say if you don't have anything, you don't have to come that week. They always come. Want to just have that time with me, to talk about things that they're even thinking about that might be a year or two away. So we are future thinkers as well. But the key is to let people know that it's their time. I'm here as their sounding board. And, if they value that time, I'm always available. And emergencies come up. So, always make time.
Like you are an excellent listener. So we always in leadership, we always talk about active listening skill. So as a president, as a leader, I think you have to possess that skill. And that's what I'm. And Nelson Mandela, he would say that he learned leadership from his father. When his father was the leader of the tribe, he would be the last person to talk and would listen to everybody, and then uh, then put the statement. So I think you are, that is your sustainability power. So you have been there as a president for such a long time. And my last question on this, I have seen from your bio that you always advocate to be yourself, be authentic. So that is that you and we as leaders always prefer that, to be authentic, so authentic leadership. But sometimes there are people whose authenticity might not be effective in every situation. There are people who are authentic but they're obnoxious, self-centered, and all these kind of things. So if they remain authentic and do not have room to grow, what would be, from your leadership perspective, what are your advice or take on that? So when these are the situation, do we need to be authentic all of the time, or are there times where we need to be not comfortable with who we are and sometime work on ourselves to grow?
Yeah, so I have several thoughts. So first about myself, I think I became a department chair at a very tender age. I was 27. There
Wow.
was a schism.
Wow.
There was a schism in the department, and the president asked me to be the interim chair. Um, and I would say, as I look back on that young 27-year-old, I was not comfortable with myself. It takes time. Um, Learning who I was, what was my leadership style, what did people need from me. I would say about a decade in, when I was in my late 30s, I knew who I was. I was very comfortable who I was, and so I could offer more to other people. And I realized that the direct approach is always the best. So if I have someone that we've put in and we've actually removed people from, let's say, a department chair because they were self-centered or they were doing things that's not appropriate, we would always explain. But before we would do that, I would call the person in, or the dean, or the vice president for academic affairs can do this. But I always think if it's appropriate, I can do it, and just to say that some things are not working well. And let me share with you what I've learned. And but here are ways that I think the two of us can agree that we can move forward. And if not, you may want to step aside and not continue in that role because uh, you're not happy, and the people that in your department are not happy either. Or here are some strategies that I might suggest to you, or what do you think? And let's try them. And sometimes things do get corrected. And it's amazing. We had someone early in my career who misunderstood his role. And I had the opportunity to be sort of a mentor. I always think for young people to get a mentor is very important. And we corrected it. And I think when I saw that, I thought, wow, sometimes it works. So,
Mm. Right.
you should. And it's interesting. Right now, I'm mentoring three future presidents. So the provost, the academic vice president at Marshall University, Avi, is someone I meet with on a monthly basis. He'll be a president somewhere at a big research one. And then two other individuals have moved up. One is now the dean of engineering at the University of Nevada, and the other one just became the provost at Chicago State University.
Mm.
And basically, it's when you're comfortable with yourself, you can offer so much more to others,
Right.
but it does take time. And not everyone does become comfortable with themselves. I've never really tried to understand this famous quote. It's something to the effect that we feel like frauds. There are people who are leaders,
Imposter syndrome. Yeah.
imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
well, I guess it exists. It never bothered
Yeah.
because I came to
Right.
know who I was, and where I have strengths, I play to them, and where I have weaknesses, I help other people fill in. So
Mm.
I'm very comfortable, moving forward.
Right.
How you just mentioned something really important too, and that's mentorship. For a mentee, maybe a young leader in any industry who's looking to be mentored by maybe someone like you, who you just mentioned taking on a couple of mentorships. What should we look for in a mentor as someone we know would be a good fit for us?
Well, I would begin by saying it's very time consuming. So make sure that the mentor that you approach realizes that you realize together that you don't want to meet twice a year, that you would like to really spend time with them and to have them come and observe you. I have on occasion have young faculty that ask me to come into the classroom to watch them teach. I mean, they could invite anybody, but through time, they realize the president here is willing to do that. So I would choose someone that's first willing to give you the time. Everyone's willing to say, "Oh, sure, I'll be your mentor," but they don't realize the how it's quite a commitment if done correctly. And then I would choose someone that you admire, that this is someone who's been successful and someone who has your admiration because you're hoping to be that kind of person one day. And so those would be, and there are lots of other things I could say, but I was very fortunate in that I didn't actually ask someone to be my mentor, but I constantly sought them out and said, "Could I come up for an hour? I just want to run something by you," or "I'm thinking of doing this." So they didn't realize they were my mentors, never officially asked, but I had two presidents that always gave me time, and they were really great friends. They became in time.
That's great.
Snuck in
Well,
the back
Eric,
door. It's good.
oh yeah, yeah. Eric, I have one last question for you, and we really appreciate your time and your
Oh, of
great insight
course.
today. So, my last question for you, I ask this occasionally, but I got to ask you because I can't think of a better person to ask, and that is, what advice do you give that recent college graduate in getting them off to a good start in their
Sure.
career?
Sure. And I jotted some things down here. Um, what did I put here? Yes. Well, first of all, and this happened to me, enjoy whatever you choose in life, choose something that you enjoy. I learned very early on that I loved the academy. I thought someone would pay me to actually teach and do research. Maybe someone who loves being a coach or someone who loves being a radio announcer. So I say to my students all the time, because a lot of our students right now, because of the recession and the pandemic, are choosing careers in business. And so I ask them, what excites you about economics or what excites you? And it's really about making money. Their parents lost their jobs. And so that really had a tremendous effect on them. But I have a student who is an art major. His parents have called my office, which is just I'm incredulous. Dr. Bitterbaum, can you suggest that he not be an art student? He never, but I won't tell you about the conversation. But first thing is, do something that you enjoy doing, and and I would say find a mentor as you first come out. You're starting to work in the world of business or a coach. I'm sure Jim, there were other coaches at his high school that were much more senior. How do I work with the administration? How do I work with a recalcitrant parent? How do I find a purchase order? So finding a mentor can be, very helpful. I would volunteer. I always say to come early and leave late. You know,
Mhm.
you can learn a lot, and it takes persistence. Uh, and but the key is to do something you enjoy. It's the old cliche. If you're doing something you enjoy, it's not work. And to be truthful, I don't think I'm working. They're paying me to do something I enjoy doing. Now, there are days, as I said, that I haven't enjoyed it, but there are other days where it's the greatest job in the world.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So rewarding. Dr. Bitterbaum, and thank you so much for your time. Or Eric, as I know you want to go by.
Yeah,
Um, I
please.
I really appreciate everything you've said, especially about mentorship, because that's so important for any young and emerging leader, and it's something that we've really missed out on. But say somebody, my final question is somebody maybe wants to get into higher education and is thinking about going that route. What would you suggest they do to take that first step? Maybe once they have the degrees necessary to pursue the position they're looking for, what would you suggest they do after that?
Yeah, once you have the credentials, you would apply, and a lot of people are interested in prestige. They have to be at X university or Y university or at this private high school or whatever the case may be. I think wherever you go, there's opportunities, and no one says you can't move on. So I started my career at a small university called Nebraska Wesleyan University. Um, Only had 87 full-time faculty, but it gave me plenty of opportunities to do things. And then, of course, at a tender age, I became, the department chair. That I had the opportunity because the president asked me then to become the assistant provost. That's like a dean. And then I did move on. I did go to a big university before I came here. I was at West Virginia University, some 30,000 students. I was a vice president on the campus, and I was also president of one of their regional. And I realized I actually like smaller campuses. That's where I could get to know the faculty and the students. So I would experiment. If you're in, there are small church-related colleges, small privates, there are medium-sized schools, there are the great big universities with 55,000 students. I don't know that I would, you're a number, even as a faculty member, we have a university here in the SUNY system with 10,000 employees.
Whoa.
Uh, I don't know that I would enjoy being a faculty member with 7,000 other, so what I would say is that you want to be an academic, you want to teach and do research and service, and then you have to find where you're most comfortable. Do you want to be in a class where there are 400 students, like at Ohio State, or be in a class of 12 students where you really get to know everybody at my college? So yeah, I would tell you it's a great life. I actually think the best job in the world is being a tenured full professor at a good school. You become an administrator by accident. Get to build things, and that's what I've enjoyed doing is building things. So I would tell them go after those credentials, work at a university or a community college. The rewards are extraordinary, and this is what I would share with you. I've been out of college since I was 22, and then I got my degrees. But I still hear from all my students, and they keep coming back. They're in their 50s now, and they want me to meet their families. And what they're saying to me is that you changed my life in some small way, and we're coming back to show you our family because you were important to me, and I want them to meet you. And I want you to know that you did something special. So that happens to me a lot. And so I realize that I must have done something right. And as a teacher in a high school or a junior high or in a college, it's a great life when you look back. You may not have any wealth, but you have all this spiritual wealth that is worth so much.
Yeah, well
Well
said.
put. Well put. And finally, Eric, we come up on the end of our time, is there anything that you'd say as far as learning more about you, learning more about somebody if they're interested in SUNY Cortland, what they might do to pursue, whether it be a parent or a student themselves?
Well, go to our website. There's just so much information there. We also have some really excellent literature we'll give to you. I hope you have good grades because, as you know, it's very hard to get in these days. But no, we'd love to have great candidates. And I've always said Jim should have sent us his basketball players who went D1. That's how you win national championships. You get D1 players moving down to D3. And
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
says, "What is that young man or woman doing playing for you? They should be at, you know, uh, Florida or Alabama."
Right, right. Yeah,
Well, they chose us, and it's made a huge difference.
yeah,
Well, that really
absolutely.
says something. And who doesn't want to win a championship, right?
And you used to be a Division I player, but I understand they want to go to D1 schools.
Dr. Erik Bitterbaum, thanks so much for your time today, and thank you for all the great insight you provided to our young leaders.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.